Hey guys, how's it going? I don't think I've mentioned it on my channel before, but I love Mass Effect. You can probably tell that I'm a Nintendo guy at heart, but there are a handful of IPs that really pulled me in last generation, and the Mass Effect trilogy was one of them. EA, though, they've been teasing us endlessly about the next game without giving us a full reveal. Remember E3 2014? Oh man, this is it. They're finally gonna reveal Mass Effect 4. Okay, here we go. Lay it on me, EA!
Great stories are timeless and they'll last forever.
How far can we go with these new games? Wait and see.
How about E3 2015? Okay, it's been a year. That was a teaser. This is where they blow it open. Mass Effect Andromeda, let's see some gameplay.
Ghost riders in the sky.
Then there was E3 this year. Woo, it's been a long 2 years, but I'm finally ready to see what Mass Effect Andromeda is all about. Hey!
With Mass Effect, we are going further than ever before. A whole new galaxy for you to explore.
Then Gamescom. Biggest gaming expo in Europe. I'm sure they were saving it until now. Give it to me, Gamescom! Then most recently, the PlayStation meeting. Man, this PS4 Pro looks pretty sweet. Whoa, what's this? Mass Effect? With gameplay? Oh man, oh man, oh man, this is it! This is finally it!
That must be the lockdown console.
Ah, it's right on our
Now I guess we gotta wait until November 7th, which is apparently a thing, to get an actual look at the game. By the way, I bet you $50 it ain't coming in March. But in the meantime, we can hype ourselves up ridiculously and set our expectations impossibly high. Eagerly chat about what we might hope to see in the game. Okay, so I don't want this to just be a big make it more like 1 and less like 3 thing, but just real quick, while we're talking about it, please make it more like 1 and less like 3. The funny thing is, I didn't even think 3 had the worst ending in the world. I played it after the fact and hadn't heard all that stuff BioWare had promised about a ton of custom endings. The end choices were really not great, but it was the rest of the game I had more of a problem with. Plot holes, Jessica Chobot, preteen fanfiction dialogue and characters, Jessica Chobot, exceedingly serendipitous partner reunions, Jessica Chobot, awkward, forced, out-of-character references to fan-favorite lines from earlier games.
You big, stupid jellyfish.
Then, of course, there's Jessica Chobot. Seriously, if you're looking to completely break player immersion when they're playing your epic space opera trilogy, memes and YouTube personalities are a really great way to do it. Mass Effect 3 was way too self-aware and really just lacked the intelligence of 1, and 2 to a slightly lesser extent. But now that that's out of the way, let's talk about that intelligence. If there was one thing that pulled me in right off the bat when I first booted up Mass Effect 1, it was the writing. And that includes not only the dialogue and plot, but also the world building. I'm a really big fan of Star Trek, and at its best points, Mass Effect is written like a great episode of Star Trek, and in some areas even surpasses it. I want this same level of care and nuance in Andromeda. I want to be instantly invested in the plot. I want to get completely sucked into random conversations with any NPC I meet. I want to spend tons of time digging through codexes because I'm legitimately interested in learning more. There are 2 aspects of the writing, though, that I want to see the most, and the first is moral dilemmas. I'd say this concept most ties Mass Effect to Star Trek, right after both being, sci-fis that happen in space. Some of the trilogy's best moments were when you got done blasting through a bunch of bugs or zombies or mechs or whatever, and you were smacked right in the gut with an enormous decision to make. The choices were pretty much always Paragon or Renegade, but that didn't mean choosing was easy, even for a largely Paragon player like me. I tend to get really into my games and play them like I would in real life, so these kinds of decisions are exciting and intellectually stimulating and really make me think about them long after the fact, especially when the lives of the characters are at stake. I want more of that heart-wrenching decision-making, so hit me with your toughest choices, Andromeda, I can take it. The second aspect of the writing I fell in love with during the Mass Effect trilogy was that world building I was talking about. I haven't become so legitimately interested in the workings of a fictional universe since I don't even know when. The writers just put so much care into creating their races and explaining why they are the way they are. Take the Krogans as just one example. Their planet is harsh and deadly, so they evolve to be really strong and breed rapidly. Then when they learn how to split the atom, they nearly destroy themselves. Then the Solarians come and give them spaceflight so they can fight the Rachni, but then outside of their oppressive environment, their numbers explode and they threaten to overtake the galaxy. So the Solarians have to infect them with a virus that lowers their birth rate so much that their society is reduced to nearly nothing. This is the kind of stuff I love! The first 3 games embraced the idea that life on other planets could be dramatically different, and also referenced actual science when creating planets, and not every sci-fi universe is willing to do that. I want Andromeda to have that same creativity and realism. I want new races that are just as interesting. Okay, so now let's get a little more technical and talk about ammo. I wasn't one of the people who opposed the introduction of what was essentially ammo in Mass Effect 2, but I didn't welcome it with open arms either. I think what they did was take an interesting yet slightly flawed system and just chuck it out the window in favor of a more traditional one. I don't really have any hopes that they're going to do anything other than regular old ammo in Andromeda, but I can still keep my fingers crossed. What I want is a mix of the two systems. I've seen plenty of clever ideas from fans online, and I could go for either some new iteration or a simple combination. Maybe you've got your thermal clips, but when you run out, the weapon reverts to a Mass Effect 1 state where you can only fire so much before it overheats. I mean, both systems have their perks, so why not incorporate both? Because ammo is kinda boring and samey all by itself, and the overheating thing at least made one a little more unique in that regard. Here's another one where they just sorta tossed out the old system and went with something more straightforward. In Mass Effect 1, when you went on a mission, it was really like you were exploring an area, and there was stuff to hack and loot to find, and just a lot more to do. By the time 3 came around, the game consisted of the in-between parts where you manage your team and your stats and all that, then the missions where you shoot guys and talk a little and shoot guys and flip switches and shoot guys. Now, don't get me wrong, throughout the series they simply made the combat better and more involved, but by the end it was starting to feel a little like a traditional shooter with a little RPG stuff sprinkled in for fun. The inventory system of 1 was seriously flawed. I mean, the whole game you're just picking up loads and loads of junk you don't even need, and it's pretty cumbersome, and I can't even argue that simply discovering a weapon and adding it to your loadout choices is a better system. The thing I miss is that rewarding feeling of finding some great loot. I just loved searching crates and stuff in 1, even if most of what I found was worthless. Apart from the occasional weapon unlock, in 3, if you feel like looking around an area, you're pretty much gonna find metagel and credits. Scanning planets in 2 and 3 did lead to a lot of goodies, but it's a lot more fun to go down and nab them by hand. Even if they don't bring back an inventory system, I hope Andromeda just has a lot more stuff to find. Obvious things like minerals and weapon upgrades and credits and all that, but maybe even more items and resources and stuff. I want more to do than just shoot, because that's what you do on a mission. You shoot. A bunch. Some might argue that too much searching breaks off the shooting too much, but I enjoy that kind of pacing. I like my dumb rewards for wasting more of my time. More collectibles for Arlo. More. Ah! While we're talking about constant gratification, here's another one I'll admit is a little silly, but important to me nonetheless. In Mass Effect 1, there's a pop-up that tells you how much XP you gain every time you take out an enemy. I can't even tell you how much I miss that. I'm like a dog, apparently. It's hard for me to care about anything unless someone is constantly throwing treats at me. Only dishing out XP at the end of a mission was a bummer. Not only did such a rigid structure make it feel less like I was exploring space and more like I was playing a video game split up into perfect little chunks, which is something I'll touch on in a minute, but it was immensely rewarding to directly see how my actions made me stronger, and to hear that level up chime and even be able to rush onto the stat screen and raise some skills on the spot. Every enemy I downed wasn't just an enemy I shot out of my way so I could get to the end of the mission without dying, but a little XP present I got to open right there. Killing stuff with the Mako reduced the experience you gained, so hopping out and finishing guys off at the last second was weirdly fun. Not only do I want a return of these pop-ups, but I want to get different rewards for killing guys in different ways. Something to encourage me to do more than, empty bullets into stuff. Rewards for headshots or environmental kills, or maybe the game could even offer some special talents that give you rewards for all sorts of different things. Oh, and here's another thing about XP and talents and all that. That's one thing I think 3 had down pretty pat. I would have preferred a few more talent options, though I like how much more substantial the upgrades were versus 1's huge wall of stats where it was all too easy to waste, and I loved 3's use of talent evolutions. I would love to see even more diverging paths for individual skills with greater differences between choices. I want more options to fit my playstyle, especially if they're going to stick with only a few talents per character. Now, there's one last thing I want to see in Andromeda, and it's the series' biggest example of it wasn't perfect, so we chucked it in the trash. Early info on the game has already confirmed that it will be coming back, but I still want to talk about it. I'm talking, of course, about planet exploration. In 2 and 3, you just scan planets very boringly in order to find stuff. But in 1, there are tons of planets to actually go down and explore in the Mako. But like I said, it wasn't perfect. You spend a lot of time just driving around, kind of going nowhere, checking each edge of the map for anomalies and mineral deposits. There isn't a lot to find, and all the different places are kind of samey, and sometimes you just can't figure out how to get over a mountain and you get stuck and feel like a doof. But I loved exploring planets. I don't know why, but it was one of my favorite things about the game. Like I mentioned earlier, it made me feel less like I was playing levels in a game and more like I was cruising around the galaxy and checking stuff out. A sense of exploration is extremely important to me, especially for a series with such amazing world building. I am so ridiculously stoked to hear that they're bringing back the Mako and planets and open environments and overall exploration, because gosh darn it, I just love that stuff so much. My biggest hope is that this time around we get more varied environments with a lot more stuff to find. Just like with crates and stuff in foot missions, I want there to be a lot of resources worth finding. Useful stuff that makes me feel like an awesome explorer. Even on top of just being fun to me, breaking up the gameplay with that kind of leisurely snooping helps me control the pacing. It's like a form of relaxing or recharging, which in turn makes me feel like I can tackle the main story whenever I want, which makes me care more about the story overall. Well, I don't know how much of it I'll get, but that's what I'm hoping to find in Mass Effect Andromeda. After Breath of the Wild, it's probably my next most anticipated game coming in the near future. One of the few games of the last several years that I'm like frothing at the mouth to get my hands on. What kind of stuff would you like to see in a new Mass Effect? New character classes? New gameplay elements? Musical numbers? Let me know down in the comments, and in the meantime, I'll be doing what any real Mass Effect fan does. Sending angry tweets to EA. See ya! You stink. Haha, that'll show him.